with it. Okay, and I'm going to take and disable the talking, so it's just you and me. So go ahead and share your screen.
It won't let me. It says that she can't unmute.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay, now you should be able to share now. So, okay, something's with the computer, I guess. All right. Well, if you need anything, Claire, you can just send it over, send in the chat like you just did, and we'll talk to you at that point. But let me introduce first, I'll introduce Jim Carroll. Love working with Jim Carroll, and you know, it's funny, he talked me into doing some webinars, and I talked him into doing some webinars, and so I talked him into doing this, the checklist of doing your own SEO. So these are I said this in one of the networking meetings today. I said, this is the cheat sheet. You know, this is what you need to do, and you don't have to do everything in it. Do the things that are the most important to your type of business, and then go back and get the rest of them done as you can. But this gets you so that you have a lot more SEO traffic, which is what this is all about, is traffic. Traffic to your website. And of course, with the TIE fighter behind him, they could shoot him at any time. You know, we'll let him have his way. Anyway, want to introduce Jim Carroll, my friend. He is an SEO expert. There are very few that can compete with him, mainly because he's always studying about SEO and how to improve the SEO scores for his people that he works for. And he's done some phenomenal things with people in the past and currently. So we're going to turn the time over to you, Jim. If anyone has any questions, feel free to give us a shout in the chat, and I'll ask them the questions. So thank you very much, and it's all yours. So go ahead.
Thank you, Boyd, for that great introduction. And I want to let him know that I appreciate him and all the stuff that we do together. We do work together on multiple projects. So I appreciate his skill set, which tends to be more social media. Mine is optimization, and his is social media. So it's a good partnership, a good teamwork, if you will, when it comes to ranking your website on the internet. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we're going to get started with the presentation for today. So my name's Jim Carroll, and I own a company called E.A.T Total Solutions. As Boyd mentioned, we were actually having a cup of coffee one day, and I was challenging him a little bit, saying, you know, gee, you should, you know, do some more stuff online. You know, you have such, you know, vast knowledge. You should share that, and let's do a kind of a do-it-yourself seminar for social media. And he flipped that right around on me and said, hey, why don't you do a seminar, a checklist for, you know, how people can do it themselves for search engine optimization. And I tried to talk myself out of it, or tried to talk Boyd out of it, and told him it was far too complicated for anybody to handle that on themselves. But the more we got into it, the more it made sense. We actually have a website that's a do-it-yourself website. I'll mention that in just a minute. My name is Jim Carroll, and I've been in the SEO game for a little over 13 years, I guess going on 14 years now. Prior to that, I owned a web hosting company, and prior to that, I owned a web design company. So I've been in the internet game well over 20 years, maybe approaching 24 years. So with the experience that I have, I've developed a checklist that we basically have. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. This is series number 3 of 6. I broke it down into a group of 70 topics that we can go over. And we're going to dive into some of those today. In all fairness, of course, it's sponsored by today's seminar, sponsored by E.A.T Total Solutions and Big Picture Media, which is owned by Boyd. I mentioned a website that we own called SEOin360.com. We also own one called reputationrevolution.com, and Code, which is a product that I help all of my clients actually, it's a sales tool basically. So we teach them how to sell more stuff, whether it's in person or online. And then there's a newly emerging website that I want to mention. It's called mylocalpro.com. And I'm really excited about that. I'm working on it in conjunction with Boyd. And it's going to help local vendors, local tradesmen, if you will, sell their wares, sell their products. You know, if you're a painter, a roofer, something like that, we're going to be able to help you specifically in your local markets, promote your products there. And, you know, I should actually put a slide in here and thank Athena Coffee for letting me use their facilities from time to time when I do these. So I'll put Athena in there next time. I didn't think of that till just now. So last week, when we started the checklist, I had a picture of a tractor, and I think that we covered a lot of ground, or we moved a lot of ground in the first two seminars. Today, we're going to really dig into the nuts and bolts of it. This is seminar number 3, I'm sorry. But in seminar number 2, we covered a lot of ground. So let's dive right into the nuts and bolts. And I've narrowed this down from about 200 to 250 markers that we generally track when we're in great optimization for a client. You know, we don't have time every day to check all of them, but the ones that I've chosen for this seminar series are about the best 70 that we want to pay attention to. And I always change the photo at the bottom of this particular slide. That is actually a long-tailed spider. There is such a thing. That's a little bit of an artist's illustration of one. You can see that long tail on that spider. He's kind of getting drugged back into a black hole. And sometimes I think of the internet as a big black hole. Metaphorically speaking, there's a lot of different ways that you can actually think about getting sucked into the black hole, whether it's because you're up at 1 o'clock in the morning studying or trying to figure out what Google's doing to you, or you're having to deal with things like long tail keywords. And we're going to jump into some of those today because those are the nuts and bolts of what it is that we do. The first couple of presentations that we did, I spoke specifically about what is SEO, and more specifically, like how it started, where it came from. And generally speaking, Jefferson Airplane was accredited. Their general manager was accredited with starting the terminology search engine optimization, because he thought they should be on the first page, and they were languishing on about the 4th page. So he and his friends figured out what they needed to do to manipulate Google to get them up on the first page. So I was thinking about this the other night when I was getting this slideshow put together, and it struck me as odd. What is optimization? I actually did a search for it, ironically, and it says that search engine optimization is the process of building quality and quantity of web traffic. And I always think of it in that term. To have it stated so clearly, I thought that was kind of a little bit of a shock to me. SEO refers specifically to organic traffic and not paid traffic. Paid traffic you can manipulate, obviously, by bidding higher or outbidding your competitors or putting more ads in. That's really kind of I guess it's orthodox today, but it's I don't like that methodology. I really prefer the organic optimization, and that's what we're talking about and what we're going to specifically continue to talk about for the rest of this series. So Google is the only real search engine that I really care about. And there's a little graphic with Yahoo and Bing and Yandex, and there's DuckDuckGo, which has come to light, and there's a Chinese one, and there's a European one. These are all good search engines, but Google, and the number varies a little tiny bit, but it's somewhere between 92 and 88% of the traffic always goes to Google. So when you think about all of those competitors, all of them are fighting for about 10% of the traffic. Google owns 90% of the market. And recently, there had been some hearings on Capitol Hill, and the senators are wondering if, via the antitrust laws, we should break up Google, because they do dominate their market so heavily. If you guys recall the Ma Bell breakup, that was because they dominated the market. Well, we're kind of in that same situation again, and I don't think that they're going to, give things up just, without a little bit of kicking and screaming. But this is the environment that we're in. Google is too dominant in the market. They're so dominant, I don't even care about any of the other search engines. When I optimize a site, I only optimize for Google, and all of the other search engines will fall into line. So all I do is care about Google. Everybody else falls into line. This is a good graphic. I like to use it as, if you've seen my presentation over the last year or so, I've used this one a lot. But it explains the dominance, really, if you'll think of it, of Google. Between Google and YouTube, which is owned by Google, they control a significant amount of that, of the market. Facebook is the only one that's even remotely close. And everybody else, splinters into these little groups like the Yahoo group, or video group, or the Bandu group, which is Chinese and stuff. So Google just dominates everybody worldwide. And I want to point out that a Google search is a Boolean type search, and that is a search that operates with keywords and then modifiers to those keywords. You can put words like and not in as modifiers. Boolean search can be, constructed like hotels in New York City or and New York City, and it will deliver some good results for it. This is in something that it kind of contradicts a literal search engine. A literal search engine, you get the results exactly for what you type in. With the Boolean search, it's going to give you some freedom, some flexibility in your search, and deliver the best results that they think they can at any given time. Slide I used last week. It's really important to me to know that Google, this is their mission statement. This is on the wall at the corporate offices in Google. It says that their mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible. I pointed out last time, and I'll continue to point this out, they don't say that they're going to optimize the English-speaking information or the Chinese information or even the Russian information. It's all of the world's information and make it universally accessible. When you consider that websites are built at about one a second, 24 hours a day, that's a significant amount of information that Google has to digest, understand, index it, rank it, and push it back out as a search result. So this is a significant amount of traffic, or it's a big project that they basically bit off. Talk about search engines and why they rank things, and that's the ultimate gist of what we're getting to. I like to use this as an example. This is a pie. I call it my SEO pie, and it's broken into 3 components: the on-site content, the link building content, and then social media and reviews. Well, the on-site content goes without saying. The meta descriptions, the H tags, the alt descriptions, blogging. Blogging is a very powerful tool to give you fresh content to the website, and that's a requirement. That's one of Google's requirements to rank well. You have to always be putting up fresh content. Social media is important. Boyd speaks more about that than I do. It's really important to Google that you have a social media following and that your reviews are positive. And Google's trying to deliver the best experience possible to all of their surfers or all of the users. So if you have a bunch of negative reviews, that tells Google that you are not taking care of the business. You're not taking care of the client. And Google wants to make all the clients be happy and satisfy their needs, satisfy their search with appropriate companies that are well-mannered, well-behaved. They respond to their reviews. They take care of their clients. You don't think of a corporation as having a conscience like that. That's truly how Google perceives themselves. They want to deliver the best results possible, not literally, but quite figuratively, which includes good quality reviews on social media, and Google My Business, of course, being one of those social medias. And then, of course, link building. think my next seminar, my next series of seminars, we're just going to talk about link building for a couple of seminars because it's fascinating, but that's after we get done with the SEO seminar series. First step of 12s, these are the first 12 steps that we went through, and it's understanding everything from basic SEO terminology to menu and site structures. We go through that. That was quite a great seminar that day. The next one was steps 13 through 25. Spent a great deal of time about XML sitemaps, helping Google basically find your website, and then knowing how many pages there are on that site. If you create a map and can show them, then they'll actually index and scan every single page. They'll send their crawlers out and scan all that information. How to deal with problematic issues like a 404 error. If you have pages that are broken or pages that don't render properly, Google's going to punish you, not reward you. So by putting in a 404 redirect or a great note there saying that they've typed in the wrong URL, that goes a long ways to helping Google kind of digest and understand what people are where they're going. So today we're going to discuss topics 26 through 38. And I'll just, I hate reading stuff to you guys. We're going to talk about meta descriptions, your brand, optimizing links, optimizing snippets, H1 tags, which is a big heartburn for me, headings, of course, targeted keywords, and how to fix content on your site, optimize for E.A.T, which should compel all you guys just after the lunch hour. You need to eat beautifully, and then of course styling, formatting, and a dedicated sitemap just for images. So that's what we're going to jump into. Of course, there is a bonus today. Woohoo! So the bonus today, we're going to talk in depth a little tiny bit about targeted keywords. I mentioned that earlier with the reference to the long tail spider. We're going to talk about long tail keywords and targeted keywords, and talk for just a moment about which keywords are money keywords. I mean, the whole thing is about commerce. It's about money, and if you're not performing well or getting the right keywords that give you a return on your investment, then you're missing out on the boat. So this is what we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. So earlier in the series, we spoke about research, and did you do your research? Did you find out if there's any competition? Did you gather information about that competition? Moving on, we went to on-page, some topics that were on page, naming a URL. Does your URL accurately describe what it is that you do? Does it have anything to do with it? Do you have multiple URLs? Do you redirect them appropriately? You kind of get into the stuff I care a great deal about when you get into the on-page stuff. This is a pretty substantial list. The next slide here I want to point out to you guys, these are all off-page activities that actually affect your search engine optimization. So, there's some simple things. I'm just, scanning through it real quick. But do you sponsor events? Do you get credit online for sponsoring events? You promote your website. How do you promote your website? Not only in print, you do press releases. Do you request people to follow you? You have an increasing velocity of traffic, and the term increasing velocity is interesting to a lot of people. You can't just put in 100 links, for example, and then say, okay, I'm done. I'm never going to get links again because I put in my 100 links. Google wants to see a positive velocity, and that positive velocity works in this fashion. Basically, if you have an increased velocity to a certain level, Google thinks that you were providing great information, you were providing research, you were providing all of the things that your clients want to know about what it is that you do. If you sell coffee, for example, and you have a coffee supplier that can create a link from his website to yours, that makes sense to Google. If that coffee supplier follows a motorcycle shop, and it might not make sense. It'll Google will actually follow that lineage of links back 3 generations. So if you're a coffee shop and there's a coffee bean roaster, and then all of a sudden there's a motorcycle mechanic, that doesn't make any sense to them. So you need to make sure that all of your links 3 generations old are working appropriately for you. So how you create that velocity without offending Google becomes very, very important. And so we're going to jump into that in just a little bit later, but let me move on. So people ask me after the first 2 seminars, how do they make changes to affect their SEO? And there's, these are some slides that I put together. You can change the code. You can talk to your hosting provider. There's speed, and it becomes a real strong aspect of how all this works. You can talk to your colleagues. You can have programmers help you. You can add plugins that help you with a variety of functions. We're going to talk about plugins in just a minute. Speed, something that you'll see that I harp on all the time. And if you have a plugin that can help optimize your speed via images, then that's something certainly that you want to deploy. Put this little snippet in here. And I want to talk in general about business. And it's much easier to have client retention than it is to always be looking for new clients. So if you have clients and you've been able to satisfy them and get them to your website because your site's worthy and you have good information, you want them to come back and buy more stuff for you. It's ultimately easier for you to talk to those people on a regular basis. You can do that with an email campaign, a drip campaign. You can do that with appropriate information like blogging about appropriate topics. It's much, much easier to keep a client than it is to keep finding new ones. So bear that in mind as you're walking through this. So we're going to jump right in here. This is step 26 through 27. And you need to optimize your meta description. So this is actually my site. I picked on my site for whatever reason last night when I was putting this together. And it says that meta description is this description right here. It says SEO, Salt Lake's premier search engine optimization company, link building, SEO copywriting, social media management, and then call us. And I actually messed up when I wrote this because you're allowed 160 characters in your meta description. And I clearly went 10 characters longer than call us at, then I put my phone number, my 10-digit phone number in after that. So if somebody's searching for me and they want to call me just from my meta description, they can't get to me. They can't find me. They literally need to go to my website. This whole graphic is if you search for E.A.T Total Solutions, this whole graphic is what you will find. The meta description is the most compelling bit of information that will pull people in. Fortunately, I have a Google My Business account, and you can see my phone number. You can see that I'm open 24 hours a day. You can see that I'm in Heber. So that all gets pulled in from the primary search for E.A.T Total Solutions. There's one other thing that I'd like to point out, and that is if you did a search for E.A.T Total Solutions, everything, and I mean every single position on the first page is very specific to me. It's E.A.T Total Solutions, E.A.T Total Solutions. There's a couple things about my Facebook account. There's a couple things about my blogs. You can go several pages deep, maybe 3 or 4 pages deep before it's very muddy with any of my competitors or anything else. This is all about SEO, all about optimization. You kind of have to ask yourself, how does that happen? Well, it's because I've been doing optimization for 13 years. My site is worthy in the sense that I've got so much content. I've got so much content about SEO. I stay up to date. I was one of the very first people that coined a blog about social distancing. So my content, my site stays very, very relevant to the real world. So you need to fix those meta descriptions. You need to have them working for you. Here's something that I always ask my clients, and I rarely get a good answer. But have you checked your brand? Have you searched for yourself online? So please, check your brand and make sure you're coming up with something appropriate. If you have an X-rated brand, or a name that's X-rated, motorcycle shop or whatever, because you're extreme sports related, is how does Google perceive that X-rated ranking? Are you X-rated because you're nefarious, or are you X-rated because you deserve the X rating for extreme sports? So thinking about your brand, thinking about how all that works together is hugely important. So steps 28, 29, and 30 are all kind of interesting. You need to optimize your site for site links. And site links take on a variety of fashion. These are extra pages on this particular competitor. He's a competitor of mine. For his site, he actually has driven links to rank his site map. All of these pages are so important in his ranking that he's ranking for each of those particular pages. When you get into posting for featured snippets, featured snippet are these things down here. So reliablesoft.net has put in a snippet for technical SEO. These are all items that are important to the particular technical aspect of what it is they do. And Google loves to post lists like this. So this actually came off the top of a search for a subsequent page when I was searching for reliable soft, and it showed a bunch of technical snippets that they do. They talk about breadcrumb menus. They talk about canonical URLs. Google loves little snippets like that that enhances basically what it is that you're talking about, or what it is that you do. So make use of those types of things. Now on 31 and 32, we're actually getting into something that I see broken all of the time. And that's the H1 tag for websites. And there's rules that people don't understand or that people don't know. And Google doesn't necessarily publish these rules. And I'm going to say that they change, fairly frequently. But this is an example of what a heading tag or an H1 tag. We call them H1 tags over here. So H1 tag is just a heading tag. So there's a heading tag. You're allowed one heading tag. There's a heading 2 tag. You're allowed as many H2 tags as you want. This is an H3 tag. You're allowed as many of those as you want. So H4, H5, H6s, they just run down through this. You're only allowed one H1 tag. So I want to call your attention over here, and you see this is my website for E2 Total Solutions. I have one H1 tag, and that H1 tag is SEO Services Salt Lake City call. And if you were looking at my website, that's the header that runs across the top of my website. There's 2 other places that I say SEO Services Salt Lake City and SEO Services Salt Lake City. It's a little bit redundant. They obviously, with the context of that home page, it makes a fair amount of sense. You notice that this is an H1 tag and an H2 tag and an H2 tag and an H2 tag, and then it goes straight to H3 tags. Those are coded into the back side of the site. And as a programmer, you can designate in its bracket, H2, whatever, it doesn't matter. The coder, when you're coding the site, can determine that even if you have really small text, you can call that your H1 tag. So it's not really based on size necessarily as much as it is the code that you put in that surrounds it. I'm just going to tell you right now, the H1 tag should be your very best keyword. The very best keyword that you want to be found for should be the #1 tag, the H1 tag on your home page. Here's another site. I'm just going to jump down to it real quick. And I'm picking on Boyd, and I'm picking on myself a little bit for both of these. But this is Boyd's, and I pulled this last night. So his H1 tag is BP Media, which is what he wants to be found for. And his next H1 tag is front page. I don't know where that came from. Then the next one is grow your online business. What I want to point out is that he has 3 H1 tags. I'm sure by the time we're done with this, Boyd will have all that fixed. The point is that He should, if they're searching for BP Media, he should already be found for that. The front page doesn't even belong as an H1 tag. Grow your business online, or your online business. It's probably a combination of the best keywords for him. He's violating Google's rules by having 3 H1 tags, and at least one of them may not be the right relevance, and BP Media, of course, probably is relevant. And then he goes in and has a couple H2s and 3s and 4s. It doesn't matter beyond that. But you need to actually pay attention to these rules. And I see that rule broken with most frequency. Designers and programmers think that they're doing a huge boost or a huge benefit to a website that they're building because they put like 10 H1 tags in there. Google looks at that and thinks, gee, this guy doesn't know what they're talking about. They don't have any organized structure. They don't understand websites. So it's really problematic to start to have architectural problems like this. I mean, it really drives me batty, but I see it with a great deal of frequency. Probably 9 out of 10 websites that I scan have problems there, and some of them have nothing designated as an H1 tag. So it's if that's supposed to be your most important keyword, then there's serious problems going on there. So moving along, verify targeted keywords appear in your first paragraph. This is an example of a post that I wrote for E2 Total Solutions. And my targeted keyword happened to be SEO decade. And it's not new SEO decade, it's just SEO decade. Then in the very first paragraph, it appears twice. So it says new SEO decade, and then it says welcome to the new SEO decade. So those are keywords specific, not H1 tags. This is an H1 tag for that particular post. This is an H2 tag for that particular post. So twice it appears now, once in a H1 tag, once in an H2 tag. It appears in the body copy on the first paragraph. And then believe it or not, this image right here is called new SEO, or SEO decade is the alt description of that particular image. So if you look at just that particular blog for the term SEO decade, that blog should rank when somebody's searching for SEO decade. We're just kicking off a new year, and I felt optimistic about the new year. I wanted to write the decade. I've done everything reasonable inside of this particular blog to make it rank appropriately. The blog, anything that has less than 300 words won't rank at all. This particular blog has about 700 words. It has a keyword density of 2.8%, meaning that about 2.5 times every 100 words I mentioned SEO decade. And you can't keyword stuff, you can't cram it in there. It has to flow naturally. It has to be part of the normal vernacular of speech. You get more credit for starting a sentence with a keyword and a sentence, or less credibility, I should say, if you end a sentence with that keyword. For example, if it's new decade or SEO decade period, I end a sentence with it, it's not as valuable as beginning a sentence with it. And then, of course, you get, you'll notice here that I always have an opening statement with a hyphen after it. If you want to look at any of my blogs, you can always tell what my keywords are because they always appear like that, and then with a hyphen. So it'll be in the headline and then here. You'll notice here, however, that I bolded it, and over here it is just normal weight. So Google's, I'm telling Google, this is the keyword, this is the keyword. I want you to pay particular attention to that keyword. So it's not a surprise to me that that particular blog ranked well. So deploying all of those tricks, appropriate H tags, appropriate description, appropriate density, having the appropriate number of words. That's how you make a website rank overall. This particular website was just a website that I searched for last night. And this has to do with item number 34 on our checklist. It says add text content to accompany the non-text, basically visual images. So I chose a website that was a photographer specifically for this reason. A lot of times a photographer, and I couldn't show the whole photos, he has really great, rich images, and you can see that he's got, you know, metal prints and enlargements and film processing and some other things that he does. All of these images are great background images, and the assumption here is that they, of course, have the appropriate alt tags. So if he's trying to sell metal prints, then that alt description needs to be metal prints. Then he's supporting this by using verbiage or text that sits on top of that image. So he's got an alt description and then verbiage or text that sits on top of that supporting the actual description. So this website actually ranked pretty highly. I was pleased with it. And that's somebody I don't know, quite honestly. That just was one that I was actually doing a search last night and found it and liked it. So I chose him for my slideshow. Next one is kind of interesting. I know that when I flipped that slide over there, your eyes went to that I don't even know what to call it, that mess of a site with all the yellow and pink, and we'll get to that in a second. But on item 35, we want to optimize for E.A.T. And E.A.T is an acronym for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And if you look over here, you can see that trust and flow are very, very high. Citation and flow is very, very high. Those are both have to do with authoritativeness and trust. You can see here how authoritative this particular site is. This is part of the calculation. It's the link profile, and you can see that we're talking about the quality of the links that are being driven into this site. So that expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness are all part of the new algorithm that's just been released by Google. And a big part of that algorithm has been enhancing the user experience. Well, by improving your E.A.T or your expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthy, that, according to Google, enhances the user experience. They're going to find a website that is trustworthy or authoritative, and they're going to be more satisfied with their search result. So if I have a site that's 13 years old and I have great information about SEO, in fact, I become an authority on SEO. So I'm going to rank better than a site that just starts or a new company that just starts. There's additional ways that you can drive content, pillar content, for example, where you write horrifically long amounts of information and to rank really, really well. The more information, the better. Reason that Google has a requirement that it be at least 300 words long is because they say that we deem anything less than 300 words not even worthy for us to have our spiders crawl it and understand what that site is even about. They don't even want to crawl anything that doesn't have enough information. Just to kind of put it in perspective, I generally write about 800 words, generally speaking, on most of my blogs. Excuse me. So on most of my blogs, they're about 800 words. That's where I'm comfortable, creating a topic, talking about the topic, and then having a close. There needs to be organized structure to that particular article. That needs to be how much time I allow myself. I typically blog on Sunday mornings, and that's when I do that. So that's how much time I allot myself, and that's how many words I spit out. And that the highest performing blogs right now tend to have about 12 to 1400 words. So they have a little bit more verbiage than I do, about 50% more than I do. The highest performing blogs on the internet all have, say, 1250 words. So that means that I technically should write more if I really wanted to, if I was that motivated to rank my blogs. But that's really how it works. You meet all the needs. I have the appropriate structure. I have an H tag. I have an H2 tag. I have my best keywords in the first sentence, and then I'm already speaking from I'm speaking from expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthy, and so Google ranks my stuff higher than it does the layman. So now item 36. man, I just found this site. I was looking for something horrifically bad to show you, and apparently I've outdone myself, because that is atrocious. I mean, I don't even know what other word to use for it. But you can see that the format and the styling of this particular page is horrific. I don't know who their target market is. Maybe it's kids, but the type, is so bad that you can't read it. You can't read it coming out of the colors. There's no real structure to it. There's no real organization to it. I actually found this site I think I Googled horrific websites design, and this was one of the ones that came up. It hurts your eyes. I mean, nobody's going to bother to read that or understand it, even if it's to attract the attention of a toddler, for example. It's worthless to actually build a site that looks like that. So don't do it. So moving along, items 37 and 38 kind of wrap us up for the day, and then we're going to get into our bonus stuff. But 37 and 38 talked about optimizing images. And when you want to optimize images, the little bear that I put up there, he is a bear that is for a plugin called Tiny PNG or Tiny MCE. And that's the graphic that they chose for him. Obviously, a panda. Google tends to like panda-ish things, but if you don't optimize your images, I'm just going to tell you guys, you're selling yourself short. I had a business acquaintance, and he talked to me about building him a website, and I told him what it would cost and what it would take, and he opted to go with somebody a lot cheaper, to be frank, and he got what he wanted. His site got up, and it's pretty. And I did a scan on his site just this morning, because he called me and said, "Go look at my site, isn't it pretty?" And sure, it's pretty enough, but it took 22 seconds for the site to become fully interactive. 22 seconds. So you guys start your watch, and we're going to count 22 seconds and see how many of you would wait for that website to load for 22 seconds. I'm just going to tell you, nobody would. If it doesn't load, at least part of it graphically rich in the first, second or two, you're going to lose that surfer. They're going to bounce. And he has one great big image that covers his whole first page. And it's actually not one image. They composed a couple of images together and then still never optimized it. That primary image I think it took 18 seconds for the primary image to load. So he's killing himself. He's shooting himself in the foot because he's not optimizing images. So please, there's a bunch of programs you can use, like Tiny PNG that I mentioned, Short Pixel, Imagify, Optimal, SemiRush. There's a bunch of different programs that you can use. Speed is such a critical part. Google came out with their new core update, the Web Vitals update, and the biggest part of that is they're pushing speed. And you might wonder why that is, but it's self-explanatory. People are going away from their computers, and we're all using our cell phones today. So if you're needing a website to render and you don't make it fast on a mobile device, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. People are not using their home computers. They're actually surfing and buying stuff online from their cell phone. I recently watched a guy at a major gun store, Cabela's, and by the time the clerk could look up and see if they had a gun in stock, he was looking for a very specific gun, and it was a left-handed Citori, Browning shotgun. And by the time the clerk could get on his computer and look it up and see if it was in stock, and it wasn't in stock, and which other store had it, the guy with his phone looked it up, saw that it wasn't in the Farmington store, but it was in the Lehigh store, and how much it was, and bought it and purchased it before the guy that was standing in front of him could do the very same thing. So people are using their cell phones. You've got to get used to that and accept it, and do everything that you can to help your websites perform adequately and as best you can, because it's critical in today's environment. Your images load quickly, and that your site come up to feed quickly. That brings me to kind of item number 38, which is the last straight up item for today's topic. And it says create a dedicated sitemap or image map. Just this map is exactly the same as you did for your the sitemap, which is for all your individual pages. On each individual page, you can embed code that talks about each of the images for those particular pages, or where those images can be found. Google's, very graphic in the way they think about things, and they're graphically rich. So do everything you can to satisfy Google's need for speed. So both of those things significantly help with all of that. Which brings us to my next topic, of course, which is the kind of the tip of the day. And you can see that speed is the number one criteria that I've identified as my tip of the day. The new core, the web titles update, talks specifically about getting things to load quickly, talks about speed. And speed is affected by not only server speed, and we've kind of touched on that in the first couple classes, but how fast is your server? Is your server overweighted with requests, meaning that let's just say you have a server with 100 websites on it at your hosting provider, and is that server overweighted with requests? Are people hitting it? Are they requesting information, new pages, new things coming off that server all the time? That CPU usage will directly affect the speed. And then, of course, how quickly you can deliver it up and get it to your cell phone or to a computer, to any other means to recognize it. So the speed begins really on the server level. And so having it render quickly there is just the beginning. How is that a tier 1 facility or a tier 5 facility? A tier 1 facility directs straight into the internet. That is the internet. The internet is built on tier 1 facilities. But if you're 3 or 4 jumps away and you've got 3 or 4 different CPUs that are having to understand the request, deliver it to the next CPU, and then the next CPU, and then the next CPU before it actually renders on the internet. And then, of course, if you don't have a fast enough computer, you can easily be into 20 seconds of understanding why that's a problem. So this, speed is important. And not only is it a hosting provider based, that's where it starts. But if you have an image that has to deliver 10 times the amount of information that it needs to render that image. I don't want to get too technical, but dots per inch are kind of how a lot of people think about graphics. And I had a website, ironically, that I had one logo on it. My guys just put it in, they didn't optimize it. And the whole site, because it was in the footer, had to load that image on every single page on that whole site. Was killing my speed, and I kept going, what is wrong with this site? And I finally figured it out. We fixed that one image, and the site just sped up like crazy. But it had to load on every single page because it was in the footer. So optimize all your images, make them happen, and you'll be much happier. This particular one I wanted to point out, it had, I think it goes to like 24 seconds. Got to before things start to render. So speed is important. Okay, I'm starting to wrap up here. I want to point out image optimization are circles within circles. And you can't just pay attention to one thing. I talk about quality content. I talk about being an expert in your field. I talk about authoritativeness. I talk about fresh content. Those are all just the content circles. Then if you're starting to see a pattern develop, we talk about optimization of images, talking about speed of images, talking about appropriate images, talking about having the appropriate alt descriptions for those images. All of these things are starting to play now into the big picture. You can see how Google cares that we have the appropriate content, we have the appropriate keyword density. You can digest that and understand that this image or this alt tag that talks about skiing or whatever is appropriate. So it's not just one aspect, it's all of these circles working within circles. And I love that graphic because it's so indicative of my industry, and all those things affect each other. And so think about that as you move through. My bonus of the day is I wanted to mention keywords. And specifically, this is a new graphic for Boyd. I've been using the same one for years. This is a new one. And so I talk about shoes. And anything that's up under shoe is a short tail keyword. Anything that runs out is the long tail keyword. And it won't surprise you guys to know that the word shoe, I pulled this information just this morning, gets 1.3 million searches a month. The word men's shoes gets 680,000 searches a month. The word men's running shoes, 78,000 searches a month. And the word red Nike men's running shoes gets about 1,000 searches a month. So if you have 1.3 million searches a month, you're never going to rank for that word. I'm just going to tell you, you never will. You'll never be on the first page. And it's not a money word. The money words all happen down in this area. Red Nike men's running shoes, or men's running shoes. These are the money words. And then you get really far out here to the red Nike men's running shoes, and it's a money word. I mean, if you have red Nike men's running shoes, you can sell them and make money. This is where we shoot. This, you know, the 78,000, the 50,000. Those are the number of searches per month we actually spend a deal of time caring about, and those are the words that are worth fighting for. From an optimization perspective. Real quickly, SEO is a process. You have to measure, adjust, then remeasure, and then repeat that process again. It's a never-ending battle. You always have to be at the top of your game, measuring and adjusting and adjusting for the Google algorithm. Just do it again and do it again and do it again. Now I have my free stuff offer. Well, it's almost free stuff. So I've taken the last one that I had gave away, which was the sitemap. That's back to $19. I took this one and lowered it today to 1 cent. So keyword position checker. I have a bunch of paid tools that I use for this, and then of course there's free tools through Google. But I actually took this and used it myself this morning. I was horrifically impressed. This is a absolutely
horrifically, really?
I was impressed. I mean, it was amazing.
It shocked you.
I put a bunch of them in, and it is a $19 value, and I lowered the price to 1 cent today. So if you can get that, then by all means, it was impressive. I mean, I a lot of money for the tools I use, and this was great for 19 bucks or 1 cent, whichever you prefer. Last, a quick quote of the day. It's not about all the traffic you get, it about the targeted traffic and relevant traffic. That's the money right there, baby. So that's a great quote for you to follow. And of course, thank you. As my time is up, I tried to narrow it down to 50 minutes this time. So
well, 52 minutes is pretty good. But
yeah.
you know, one of the things that I was impressed with the other day was somebody said, is it more important to have 1,000 followers that never read you, or 100 that read everything you say online? And that really is true. On 100 people who are going to read everything you say, they're fanatics. They're fans, which is the other word for fanatic. They will share it. They'll do more with it. They will be the buyers. You can have 1 million people following you, but if they don't care, they don't read, they don't do anything about it, it doesn't matter. And that's the key with traffic. Having the right traffic is what it's all about. Okay, well, thank you so much. Any questions from anyone out there? You can.
If you guys notice that.
Sorry?
I was going to say, if you guys notice at the bottom, you can go to Facebook, look for E2 Total Solutions, and leave me a review, please.
Yes.
I need more Facebook reviews.
So that's something that you need to be paying attention to. I'm going to next week on Tuesday. This is unscheduled, but next Tuesday I'm going to do a special training, and then next Thursday I'll have another one. But next Tuesday I'm going to do one on basically how to social calendar your business. You know, a lot of people have talked about social calendaring in the past, and they even know what that means. Many people don't. And so I'm going to talk about social calendaring and how it can help improve the content and the engagement with your social media. And so in 2 weeks, we're going to have Jim back. 1 week from today at 2 o'clock, I'm going to be talking about social calendaring. So keep that in mind, and let's have a great week this week. And so
try and stay cool.
yeah, try. Yeah. Well, it's cooler today than it was yesterday by 8 degrees. So
Yeah.
okay.